Every championship team has to have more than just superstars in order for them to win that Larry O.B. They have to have players that step up to the occasion, perform far and above what they usually produce, and in doing so brings their team from good to great. These are the X factors, the players that no one is really expecting to lead the stat sheet every night, but the ones who could be the pivotal linchpin in a championship roster. Let's take a look at each one of the playoff teams that's remaining and see whether they have an X factor on their team. Let's start off in the West with the OKC Denver matchup. When you look at OKC, it's pretty clear that their roster is filled with good players, but there is one player on this team that in order for them to advance against Denver has to perform better than what he usually does, and that is Isaiah Hartenstein. If this guy is unable to step up to the occasion, if he is not an X factor in this series against Denver, I don't think that OKC is going to be able to advance because they are going up against Nikola Jokic. And of course he's going to get numbers, but can OKC do anything to limit the damage? That's really going to be the job of Isaiah Hartenstein. He's going to have to do what the Clippers did with Zubac and be able to limit Jokic as much as possible. It's a difficult task, but that's the focus that Hartenstein has to have in this series if they're going to be able to advance. They have to have at least someone who's going to be able to match up with Nikola Jokic. And it's definitely not going to be Chet Holmgren. He might get a block here and there, but the guy is just too skinny to be able to match up against Jokic. I'm looking at this series, and I think that Denver is going to pull it out, but I'm also thinking that Nikola is going to average like 48 points a game. Like, it is going to be one of those series that is just loaded with points from one player. He is going to shine like crazy. I'm expecting Shea to do the same, but I'm looking at Nikola Jokic, and I just don't see anyone on this roster who's going to be able to stop him unless Isaiah Hartenstein finds it within himself to really just man up and bully Jokic and, yeah, deal with some of the foul trouble that will probably come with that, but he's going to have to perform at such a high level for OKC to advance that I'm thinking that this might not be possible for OKC. Denver, on the other hand, they have a guy who is the X factor, and that is Russell Westbrook. You never really know what you're going to get with Westbrook, but I'm thinking he's going to excel in this one, mostly because it's such a personal series for him. He's going back to OKC where he is a legend, where people love him, and I think that he's going to step up. He is one of those passionate players. If he's not feeling it, he's probably not going to perform well. And if he is feeling it, then watch out. The guy is still at that stage where he can still get you 30 points out of nowhere. And I think that Westbrook is going to be able to do that maybe a couple times in this series. Switching over to the Timberwolves versus Golden State, I think that both teams have a few players that could fit into this category of X factors. The first being with Golden State, I think that Quentin Post might be one of those players that just no one talks about until they do because they perform so well. He is a three-point shooter, and he's a big body that you can throw at some of these 7-footers because, again, Minnesota is big. You have Julius Randle, you have Naz Reid, you have, obviously, Rudy Gobert. These guys are tall, these guys are tough, and Quentin Post is really the only guy on that roster who is capable and athletic enough to be able to handle defending some of these guys. And if he can play his cards right and have a good shooting effort, he might be able to draw Rudy out to the three-point line, which would make things a lot easier. But we'll see how many minutes he even gets. Steve Kerr has this thing where he only has a few guys and he only plays them a certain amount of time. And I'm thinking that Quentin Post might have a hard time finding enough minutes to really have enough impact. But if he is given the playing time, I think that he has potential to make an impact in this series. And on the Minnesota side, I think it's pretty clear that Dante DiVincenzo is the X factor for that team. They have a lot of different people who can defend, but he's going to be the primary guy that I think is going to be bugging the heck out of Steph Curry. And we saw how that actually worked pretty well in the Houston series. Even though they came out winning, Steph had a hard time. And I think that Dante DiVincenzo can be one of those guys that's just constantly nagging Steph Curry, making it difficult for him to work on the court. And also he can score some threes, you know, like he can actually produce on the offensive side as well. And if he is able to perform at a super high level, I think that people will be talking about him at the end of the series. Now, journeying over to the East with the Cavs and the Pacers. So with Garland out, I'm looking at Max Strus to be able to produce just a little bit more, and I'm basing that off of how he already is. Max Strus is a great three-point shooter. During the regular season, he was averaging 38% from three, and that's only gone up since he's been playing in the playoffs, going up to 46%. The guy is just killing it from the three-point line. If he is given more attempts and some more playing time, I think that he could produce enough offense to be able to at least compensate for Garland until he comes back, or until someone else steps up and produces a little bit more than what we saw in game 1. Now over on the Pacers side, Benedict Mathurin. This guy is like the diet version of Anthony Edwards. He can do everything that Edwards can do, just not quite as well, not quite as efficiently, and definitely without some of the swagger. But there is a reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo was so mad at him at the end of the series. This guy is a hard-nosed player. He is an offensive talent, but he's been struggling. He went from averaging 16 points a game during the regular season down to 12 during the playoffs.
Very bad. Very, very bad.
And I think the main reason for that is that he's shooting really poorly. He's averaging 14% from the three-point line in the playoffs, so it's not going great for Benedict. But if he can figure that out, I think that he can really contribute to a pretty good team, and maybe they have a chance of going past the Cavs. And who knows, maybe they'll be the ones who represent the East in the finals, although will Halliburton's dad be allowed at the game? Like, I mean, if it's the finals, do you think they'll go past that and just be like, yeah, we'll let Hallie's dad come back? I don't know. Maybe.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Lastly, let's take a look at the X factors for the Knicks versus the Celtics. Now, the Celtics is pretty easy because a lot of people would immediately jump and say Derek White. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out to say that Derek White is an X factor at this point. He is like the embodiment of an X factor, so I'm going to look past him and just look directly at Peyton Pritchard. I think this guy could be the X factor for the Celtics if they're going to get another championship and, of course, get past the Knicks. They're going to need some offense from their bench, which has been struggling apart from Peyton Pritchard. And if this guy is able to have some of the games that he did during the regular season, I think that they'd just be able to kill the Knicks if that happens. But I'm really hopeful that it's going to be a good series, and mostly because of the Knicks. They had some of the funnest games in the playoffs against Detroit, and I'm really hopeful that we can see that kind of passion and intensity and physicality once again. And I'm looking at Josh Hart to be able to produce for that team and be the X factor for them purely because of his rebounding. If this guard can grab as many rebounds as he's been averaging in the regular season, I think that that's going to create a lot of trouble for the Celtics and for whoever else they could face in the future if they're able to get past. Now, I think they need it. They're going to need second chance opportunities. They're going to need those offensive rebounds. They're going to have everybody crashing the boards. And yes, you're going to have Karl Anthony Towns, and he's going to give you about 10. But if they can have little Josh Hart get in there, and somehow he's just one of those players that just knows where the ball is going somehow, and he's always able to dive on the floor and get that rebound. If he is able to provide for the Knicks like that, I think that that's going to give their shooters more chances, and that can lead to some really close games with the Celtics, who I think are probably the favorites in this one. I think that if the Knicks can just hound them, if Josh Hart can play good defense and also get those rebounds and maybe give 10 points a game, I think that the Knicks will be in a good position to at least have a fighter's chance against the returning champions. So those are the players that I'm looking at and saying if they step up, they can be the X factor for their teams. Let me know what you think, though, down in the comments section. Who did I miss? Who was I wrong about? Tell me all that down in the comments. Hit the like button if you like this kind of content. Sub if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.